Welcome to 2025, Bridgecasters. If you're like me, you start off the year with resolutions, New Year's resolutions, plans for your business. And one of them is probably around getting your arms around, literally and figuratively, your AI strategy. So let's start off the year controversially. Are you ready? You're not ready. So before you click next, hear me out. It's a short episode. AI needs to be informed with data, good data, your data. My guest on this episode is Duane Barnes. He's the president of RapidScale. RapidScale is owned by Cox. Yes, that Cox. And he believes that 9 out of every 10 of you are not prepared, but you can be. It won't take a massive budget. It won't take a multi-year project, but it will take understanding where you are. You're going to want to watch the entire episode here, but let me get right to the point, right to the hot take. In order to make effective use of AI in 2025, and all of the hype around it, you are going to need to rewind back one whole hype cycle to the early 2020s to big data. Think about it. That's the last big story we were all talking about: organization, accuracy, availability, and of course, security of your data are the essential building blocks for you to build a language model that is serviceable and accurate for your business. It's the core of your AI strategy. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about on this episode of The Bridge. Find out just what to do before you turn it on this episode. And as always, if you like what you hear, make sure that you subscribe, follow, rate us, leave a good comment. You know the drill. You get all of it. So let's get it on. You're not ready for AI with my friend Duane Barnes, president of RapidScale.
Tech has reshaped our reality, redefining how we live, work, and connect. And driving this revolution, real people with bold ideas. Welcome to The Bridgecast, where host Scott Kinka has in-depth discussions with the brightest minds in tech. Together, they tackle the future of work, innovation, entrepreneurship, and navigating the new realities of AI and hybrid work. These conversations will give you the insights and strategies to stay ahead, both in business and life. The Bridgecast is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies. As the nation's leading tech advisory and consulting firm, Bridgepoint is disrupting the way businesses make and manage their technology and customer experience investments. We invite you to experience the better way, the Bridgepoint way. Now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Bridgecast. Super excited about this one. My guest today is not only a business associate, but a longtime friend, Duane Barnes. He's the president at RapidScale. We'll talk about who RapidScale is and what they do in a couple of minutes. But Duane, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, fantastic. You are, and where are we seeing you from so that our friends online know? You're in
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. A cloudy day where you are, but a good view there. Fantastic. Before we jump into your career, tell us a little bit about you. You're in Raleigh, Durham, kids, where they are in life. Just get a little bit of background so we get to know you.
Yeah, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, almost 13. Usual 12-year-old daughter stuff: soccer, basketball, sports, piano, a little bit of everything. Wife, also, of course, been with her for a very, very long time. We just celebrated 23 years of marriage 6 days ago. So all good here in Raleigh. And, we've been here since 2007. So moved up from Florida and never looked back.
Fantastic. So you are the president of RapidScale right now. RapidScale is a Cox company, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to get into all that, but just talk a little bit about your journey. I mean, you really began on the technical side from my understanding. And you and I have had some knockdown, drag out technical conversations over the years. But just kind of walk me through, being opportunistic and starting, as a programmer really, and landing as president of RapidScale.
Yeah, I always gravitated towards technology from very early age, with tinkering with computers at home. And my very first job was in dial-up tech support, as you might imagine, was the heyday of the 90s. And lots of fun, but always worked for entrepreneurs. Co-founded a couple of small companies. Some made it, some didn't. But the idea there was just always wanted to be in control of the destiny, so to speak. And did spend a little bit of time at Disney and technology, which was a great learning curve from the entrepreneur business to the largest of the largest enterprises on the planet at the time. So got a lot of resiliency and business continuity, DR type, it can't go down experience. Like if you're at Disney, you don't want the bookings engine for their travel team to go down. So massive data centers. And then kind of transitioned back to the entrepreneurs and stayed there. And over the years, as entrepreneurs do, they tend to sell their companies. And most of the time I've moved on. But this last one was a unique one. RapidScale was a great, entrepreneurial, fast growing company. But, when it was sold to Cox, I assumed that, like anybody would, that, you'd maybe stay a year or two and leave. But the Cox family is just such a unique group to work for. They're very diversified, very much about leaving the world a better place for the next generation. And so all the assets are really designed to give back to the community, to enable businesses to compete on a global scale, which is really RapidScale's mission. And all of our sister companies have something to do with clean tech, green tech, fintech, enablement of people around the world to live a more prosperous life. And that's just not normal. You don't get that with a PE firm. You don't get that with a VC firm. You don't get that typically in founder-led businesses. You're just trying to grow at all costs. So it does really allow us to connect with a greater purpose.
That's awesome. I'm going to come back to the RapidScale story in a minute, and then we're going to jump into our topic of the day, which we worked through in the pre-call. But, the story is interesting. You're working effectively as an entrepreneur to some extent inside one of the largest privately held companies in the US, if not, the largest, right? You're right up there at the top. And that's an interesting mix, right? I mean, tell me something that now, right? That you wish you could have gone back. You could tell your younger self, if you will, from this super interesting experience.
Well, I would tell you a couple of things. One is, I think particularly when people are younger in tech, either startups or early stage businesses, everyone's sort of trained to ask for stock options, ask for, RSUs, or ask for equity. And almost no one ever gets it when they ask for it, right? There really isn't a such thing as sweat equity unless you were just very lucky to co-found a business with a great visionary. I would tell you, follow the best leader you've ever worked for from one place to the next, and you will be very much fulfilled. And I think you've got a lot of followers. I've got a lot of followers, but I think that is the thing that will fulfill you, is working for the great leader. The company itself is going to vary from place to place, but I look at the Cox family, and I think there isn't a better opportunity out there. There just isn't. Sure, I could go take private equity money and start a company, or VC money and start a company, but to get the scale that we have access to here, it's just an unbelievable opportunity. So I mentor a lot of people, do lots of speaking circuits. I get asked all the time, what piece of advice would you give someone? And it's, the idea's got to be great. Don't get me wrong. Like, you got to be passionate about what you're doing, or it's just going to fall flat. But you really have to be partnered up with a great leader, and that will, make things come to fruition more times than not, because you can just watch the people that follow that leader from, typically not job hopping, but you know what I mean? Like every 5 to 7 years, they go do something else, and the same group of people follow them from one place to the next.
Yeah.
And it's successful every time. And that's not, an accident.
Certainly. And been fortunate enough myself to have been surrounded with some people that
I know you have.
I've followed around and have followed me around. And it's been, I get it. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's serendipitous too. And I think, it's also interesting that you make connections along the way. And, sometimes they're a partner and sometimes they're a competitor,
Yeah.
and sometimes you bring them in and make them your partner in the business. You're right. I think, finding your work family is the way to ultimately breed success. That's great advice. Talk to me a little bit about Rapid Scale while we're at it, because we're going to dig into this topic. Maybe our listeners aren't familiar. Certainly they're familiar with Cox, perhaps not with Rapid Scale. Just give us the elevator pitch there, if you would.
Yeah, we really are trying to. We kind of have two phases of our business, and for lack of an easier way to describe it, technically, think private cloud and public cloud, and we view that from a lens of how do we help companies simplify IT, right? So make the complex simple, give them the easy button they're looking for, which allows them to unleash innovation, right? So a lot of companies are tied up in tech debt, investments they made. In the pre-call we mentioned VMware. These enterprise license agreements, things that they've just spent money on, and so they don't have the free money, the capital to go do things that are more interesting and more innovative. And so that's what we do. We come into a business, we talk about all of their challenges, and we figure out the best way to leverage their existing assets, whether it be on-prem, in a private cloud, in the public cloud, and help them get to a business outcome. And we try to do that in a very consultative way, a very long-term view of how we can partner with a client. It might start with a PS engagement to do an assessment. It could be a full data center migration, or somewhere in between. But the idea isn't to just sell a widget, right? It's very much we want to become a partner in your business. Think of like a mini GSI, for example, like a mini Accenture, a mini PwC, but that's just focused on cloud and technology and managed services. And let us get one successful project after another under our belts with you or the client, and take it from there. And companies evolve over time. They get bigger, they get smaller, they merge, they transact, and we're there to flex with them. Just like you would do in the cloud. You consume more when you're busy, you consume less when you're not busy. We have flexible engineering, flexible DevOps teams, flexible AI engineers that can come in and really add value to the company. So we really, for all intents and purposes, stop talking about speeds and feeds and data centers and locations and networks and all of this stuff. Those things are all table stakes. Now it's about driving business outcomes on the investment in technology.
Fantastic. And then, I get your comment about the line card. Just give me understand the aspiration in terms of what you deliver. Just run me quick, like the categories that you're in from a technology perspective, so we can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the highest level, think all things AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and VMware. And then you layer on cybersecurity and professional services around that. And the professional services is really deep. You can think anything from, a data engineering assessment of where all the customer's data might sit and how best to get that to a place where you can leverage machine learning models, to I just have workloads on a legacy VMware environment and I need to get them out of a data center, to, a full-blown AI, deployment, potentially using existing software stacks or building it from scratch, like a virtual assistant, or integration with a contact center or integration with a CRM, and everything in between. So there's really not much we can't do from a technology perspective in any of the three major clouds, along with the legacy VMware stack.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's transition to chat about AI. I mean, I know that you guys, given what you just shared, there's quite a bit of investment going on the customer side, certainly on the platform provider side around AI. We're in the hype cycle right now. I'm curious. We've talked about hype cycles a lot on the show. Where are we in the hype cycle in your mind?
I think it's not at the top yet. I don't think we're at the peak of the hype cycle yet. Okay. Personally, I think it's going to continue to be a lot of hype. I would say that, there's certainly the companies, like every day I subscribe to several newsletters that tell you every morning about all the new AI tools that were released the day before. So That's why I still feel like it's in the hype cycle. Companies are being founded daily. And a lot of it's just software plugins and things to make people's daily lives a little bit simpler. Um, I think that enterprises are still grappling with how can they leverage AI to get a return faster somewhere in their business. And so that's really where we focus. It could be, um, supply chain, streamlining supply chain, streamlining a sales organization, uncovering unlock potential in your product, whatever that product might be that the customer goes to market with. And that's really where we see all the actual use cases coming from. Most times, 8 to 9 times out of 10, the customers we talk to can't even leverage AI today if they wanted to, right? They don't have their data properly organized in one of the major cloud platforms to apply a large language model or any type of artificial intelligence to, even predictive AI versus generative AI. They just don't have the data there, right? So if we really work with them on data science and data engineering to get their data, extract it from their CRM, from their ticketing system, from their back office, and get it into the cloud, so that then we can apply models to it to drive the outcomes they're looking for. And those are usually 9 to 12 month long engagements just to get them prepared to leverage AI. Now, once we're there, massive savings, massive, increased functionality, increased productivity, a lot less of the job that people don't like to do, data entry work. So think legal vertical, for example. You might have done 10,000 contracts in the lifetime of a business, and searching all of those contracts for one particular clause, and then building a new contract for a new customer based on all that legacy work that's been done, and then quickly bringing the risks, liability risks or whatever the firm is looking to protect, to light. So we're not paying attorneys to read these things word for word. We're using a model to predict the ultimately where all the risks and challenges lie, and point that out and draft a new version of the agreement on the fly using artificial intelligence. So just things that are like very commonly done that we can help customers speed up those processes.
So there's a lot there. I mean, you talked about use cases, you talked about preparation of data, you talked about length of time and project. Let's unpack a little bit of that. Let me take one step up. I mean, obviously we're in the hype cycle. Like you said, your belief maybe not quite there yet. I actually said our summit was a couple of weeks ago, and one of our keynotes was about AI, and I said from the stage, we're in the era of go get some. And in a lot of ways, kind of where we were with cloud, right? Maybe, 8-10 years ago, boards of directors saying, go do stuff. No use case. Like, it's a tool looking for a problem, but they got to be able to tell investors and that they're leaning in. So let's just flesh out the use case conversation. You gave us a good one about legal for a moment, but I think what I really want to know is less like, let's find examples, and more like, where really are we? Like, if every conversation we're having is being dominated by AI, you've talked a lot about what RapidScale does. How often is the customer coming in with a fully formed idea around what they want to do that you're executing on, or are really, you're trying to find the nail for the hammer in a lot of cases? Walk me through that process.
That's a fantastic question. I would say less than half the time does the customer have a fully fleshed out idea. They have an idea more times than not, or at the very least, they've been told, as you mentioned, by a board or a PE firm or some type of third-party advisor to look into leveraging AI to solve some problem they have. So they either know the problem they have, or they have an idea of what they might want to solve, but they have no idea where to start, more times than not. They sometimes even have been picked out the tool, like Copilot or something like that. They're like, we want to use Copilot. I'm like, why? And we're happy to sell it to you, but ultimately, if you don't integrate it with any of your data, it's just a chatbot at the end of the day. There's nothing really useful there. So that is the short answer to do they have the ideas or not? And then sometimes we do. We have the hammer and we're looking for the nail, at the customer's request. And so we get involved, oftentimes not even with IT. Usually we're talking to the marketing team, the sales team, the legal department, the supply chain department on looking for ideas really for efficiencies. And then in the manufacturing and maybe agriculture space, I'll use agriculture as an example. A lot of ag companies have tons of IoT data. I mean, you've probably seen that in your goings about. They're collecting data from sensors, data from humidity, temperature, soil samples, whatever it might be. They just collect. They're not doing anything with it in most cases, right?
Yeah.
They have it because they think they're going to need it at some point, and the data is valuable.
Or they've got some kind of governance need to say they check the sensor or whatever. So here's the law. Great. Okay, awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we found we can leverage models to predict crop yields, right? And so we can look at all the historical data, all the historical crop yields, and then we can predict the next crop yield based on current data. And that's really valuable to an agriculture business. You can use things like computer vision AI in harvesting equipment, right? So this is kind of a funny story that I think people can relate to, is the potato and golf ball story, right? You have a potato farmer that happens to be next to a driving range in the middle of the country. And dirty potatoes and dirty golf balls kind of look the same, right? The harvesting equipment.
Yeah.
Potatoes are soft, doesn't damage the equipment. Golf balls are hard and damages the equipment. And so we can install this very inexpensive camera in the harvesting equipment, link it up to a LTE or 5G network, and then train the machine to skip over the golf balls, right? Not that complicated at the end of the day, but with current day technology that exists in any of the public cloud platforms, we can actually pull that off and make it happen. And then it saves the company from damaged equipment, downtime, and loss of productivity. And it's not as expensive as one would think. It's easily deployed. We just have to upload tens of thousands of images of the two things that the A/B test, so to speak. You want A, you don't want B. You want A, you don't want B. And you train the computer to train the equipment to do the thing that you want it to do. So those are just a couple of use cases where real life scenarios, real life deployments. And most people think of AI as being this super high tech, cutting edge, scientific, sci-fi stuff, but it's so simple to just deploy nearly off the shelf solutions for very basic business daily challenges, fleet vehicles, all kinds of stuff.
There's a lot there. I do want to come back to kind of acting like a consulting company, just given both of our history, but I want to stuff that to the end. Let's stick with the AI side for a moment. You mentioned Copilot. I mean, it's really good conversation. There's been some fairly damning, things that have been out in the press of late about Copilot. One Microsoft employee says the platform doesn't do 75% of what the advertising claims to do. I don't know that that's true. And a lot of it has to do with some of what you're giving it and how you're using it, conversation we were just having. But let's just talk to that real quick. Like, you guys have a big Microsoft practice. You operate around that. It's probably the easy button step in for the go get some economy around AI right now. But like, why would someone say that? Why is the press bad? Like, is this a tech problem, a people process training problem, a little bit of both? Like, thoughts around Copilot in the workplace right now and where we are.
Yeah, I think you could say the top three, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, they all have the same problem. If you're not a prompt engineer, you're going to get what you put into it, right? Yeah. And so prompt engineers are very good at tailoring. It's sort of like the old days when you had to search for something on the internet. You actually had to structure your sentence to get the result you were looking for, and you tried over and over again until you found the thing on the internet. Now Google just figures out what you're thinking and gives you it in real time. We're not there yet.
Because Google's been listening to you in your house all week, so it has context, but that's a whole other topic.
But that's where we are with AI, right?
Yeah.
It's you have to know how to ask these GPTs the question in the structured format, and then the follow-on question, and then the filter to that question to get the answer you're looking for. The average employee is not a prompt engineer, nor do they even speak close to a structured language in everyday English. So I would say they all have that problem at the moment. They're all getting better daily, but all of them have consumed the entire public internet of data at this point, right? So they only will get smarter as more data is generated on the internet, and we're having privacy conversations and legal conversations about, well, what is okay, right, to upload to these systems. So, but back to the Copilot, I really do think it can be usefully deployed, but you need to do an actual deployment, not just install the license and tell the users how to use it. You need to connect it to your SharePoint, right? Connect it to your OneDrive, connect it to your email, connect it to all of your document repositories for it to truly be useful. And then there's tons and tons of plugins with tools like Salesforce and Slack and other things where you can have it mine all of that data as well. If you do a proper deployment, it can save you tons of time and productivity, but most people just use it for like rewriting their emails and
Yeah.
grammar check in Word, right? And that's just, I think you're not going to get the return on the expense of that license if that's all you're using it for.
You mentioned like plugins in Copilot, and I guess you could say this about any GPT, but I'm kind of cordoning off Copilot for a moment, right? I mean, you mentioned something earlier about the value of any large language model based on the information that informs it, and certainly situations are useful in the business when business information is provided to it. Is Copilot Does Copilot think about that differently than kind of the public LLMs? In other words, like if I were to hook up Copilot to my Salesforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that data cordoned off for my own use, or is it informing their public LLM? Do I think about that differently than ChatGPT and Gemini as an example?
Yeah. So for the everyday user that's not on a very specific enterprise agreement, it is going to be training the public model, right?
Okay.
And there are very large enterprises can negotiate an enterprise agreement with Microsoft to get a private version of the model, and so their data is completely cordoned off. But you have to be spending millions and millions a year to even get Microsoft's attention to carve that out for you. And of course, you pay handsomely for that model to be allocated to you. I would just say if you you go to buy Office 365 from GoDaddy or RapidScale or Rackspace or whoever, and you just install the basic enterprise license, it's training the public model. So we spend a lot of time educating clients on policy and making sure that they have internal policies. So, for example, our parent company, Cox, if I go to ChatGPT's website, the very first thing I get is a splash page from our cyber team that says you're about to leverage an AI, a public AI model, and you're agreeing that you're adhering to our policies and procedures around the data that you upload to it and making sure it's not company data or sensitive data or anything like that. And while that doesn't deter somebody from doing it that may not understand what they're doing, it's a very good safeguard for most of us that would say, oh, I should think twice about uploading a spreadsheet with all my customers to the GPT model and having it rebuild the pivot tables for me.
I mean, but truth be told, most businesses aren't even there in terms of governance. I mean, a third of CEOs report that they don't have any governance steps in place around AI right now. Talk about why that's such a. Let me take a step back. I'm going to rephrase the question. We talked to CEOs who, and CIOs who are going down an AI journey or trying to figure out what their AI journey is going to look like. And I ask that question, and sometimes they look like they've got two heads, like I have two heads. You know what I mean? Well, I haven't started AI yet, so I don't need a governance policy. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what's going on, right? Because Copilot's active, open, ChatGPT's basically free, like your employees are doing it. Talk about that risk a little bit, and how often you're having to get the governance thing squared away before you start solving for use cases.
Great. Good timing. I was just on a panel last week with Truist Bank, so they
Yeah,
were
I know them.
sponsoring.
Actually, had some AI conversations with some of the folks from
Very,
Trust Bank, and
very brilliant. Their head
yeah,
of AI for their fraud department just came over from JP Morgan, so they have the heavy hitters in the space,
yeah,
and that this was literally half of the hour and a half conversation was around this question. And what's happening is sort of teasing out the point you were making a few minutes ago is people are using it. Particularly the millennials and Gen Z are using GPT every day for all kinds of things that aren't business related. But then they get the idea of like, well, maybe this can help me like fix this Word document that I've been working on for my project at work, or maybe I can use it for teaching me how to build a better PowerPoint or something like that. And they'd go download a plugin and then another plugin and then another plugin. And they're not reading the privacy policies of any of those, of course, right? And so all of a sudden you now have company data in 3 or 4 or 5 different third parties, including all of the public large language models. And depending on what it is, you may say, okay, well, who cares? It's just spreadsheet data. But the
yeah,
moment somebody puts employee data in there or personally identifiable information, you're now at risk as the company. The employee maybe made the mistake, but you as the company are on the hook for compliances your industry may not even be in. But if data is out there and people can connect it back to a human, you very much are going to get fined by some governing body if that data is leaked.
yeah,
And that's the challenge. And as the panel I was on last week with Truist, their cyber team pointed out that the bad guys are using the same tools the good guys are using for fraud. And so it's within seconds, these same tools can crack passwords, connect your social media profile, and reverse engineer where you are and in your role, and then recreate your voice and your image and likeness, and impersonate you for fraud. And so again, it's sort of like urging people not to do things that's going to put your company data at risk or your personal data at risk. And I sort of dumb this down for most people and say, hey, would you just put your social security number in the Google search bar,
yeah,
right? And like just tell the whole world or post it on Facebook. And people are like, well, of course not. I'm like, well, why would you do that with your company data,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. And I think there's also like there's a difference between having policies in place for CYA, like we have it and we trained on it,
Yeah,
right? And actually having something happen, right? Because the damage is done there. You might not be, regulatorily or legally responsible because you've got policy in place, but the damage is still done. So, super interesting around that. Do you guys do governance work? Um, and also like if a listener is on this thing right now is like, oh, I would love that splash page that's happening at
yeah.
Cox to happen in my business. Like, are those things that you guys get involved in?
Yeah, we can definitely consult there. Typically, if the customer has nobody, let's say it's a smaller company and they have nobody in IT or no concept of a cyber group, we'd refer them to a third party that specializes in that so they can
Yeah.
build policies from scratch, like build a cyber policy or a security manual or something like that. But if they have a small team and they have some of those things in place and they just need advice on how to get it to the next level specific for AI, we can absolutely help them there,
Yeah.
and give them ideas of what we see other clients do and what we do internally. And that are very simple safeguards, because it's just like a speed bump in a neighborhood or a yield sign or something. Like just give the user the pause to like, oh, I didn't realize that I shouldn't be using this for company data.
Yeah.
And that usually will help 9 times out of 10 prevent the challenges we spoke about earlier.
So two final questions. I mean, I could go on forever on this. This has been a great conversation. I just want to double click on data for a moment. You mentioned it earlier, and then we sort of got into governance and use cases, and we sort of skipped over it. You know, data that we pulled for this other session that I did a couple of weeks ago from CIO Magazine said that only about a third of business leaders believe that they have the right data in place to effectively enable AI, right? I mean, governance aside, I don't think, and it's certainly not a technology problem. Is that the biggest reason why, AI boondoggles fail at this point, is just
Yeah.
not enough good information to inform it?
I think a third is generous. I think some of those CIOs might be overly optimistic.
Yeah.
So look, I think uh, with the exception of a rare fraction of a percent of use cases, you need to be in the public cloud, right? I mean, if unless you're doing some kind of on-prem, modeling at like a pharma level where you're trying to create the
Yeah.
next vaccine, right? You really
Mine a
need to
very
be
specific data set, sure.
you need to be in the public cloud. And that doesn't mean you're forklifting your VMs and moving them to AWS. Like that doesn't get you to a modern IT environment, right? So think all the terms you and I used to deal with 10 years ago of serverless computing and containers and like that's table stakes. If you want to leverage AI, you have to be using buckets of storage in the public cloud. You have to be in data lakes, whether it's structured or unstructured data. It needs to be near the GPUs and the machine learning models that can leverage it in the public cloud. And those models are being updated by the minute across the planet and all of the public cloud providers. And I think that's not. It sounds simple, right? But really, what it means is, and I'll use Salesforce as an example. They of course have their own AI. They call it Einstein, and it's not bad. But if you want the data that's in your CRM and you want to correlate that with data in your billing platform, and you want to correlate that data in your AP or AR platform, and then you want to know how all of that impacts your customer service. Well, you got to pull all of the data out of all those systems and put it in a data lake so that the model has access to all the data. Now, whether you stream it there real time or you store it there off, nightly, or use some kind of ETL process to get it there, it's got to be there. So effectively, the data science and data engineering work needs to be done first. And like I said, you said 30% feel like they're there. We kind of feel like it's maybe 20% are there,
Yeah.
maybe a little less than that, 15. Very rarely do we walk into a business where they've got everything in a data lake. They're using analytics. They're using advanced algorithms to access that data and provide insights back to the business. Almost never.
Sure.
So there's still some cleanup work that we have to kind of come in and advise on, and then we can deploy whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And I think that's the fun part, really, is working with clients to figure out where is the data, where's the importance, what's the significance of it, tier it, classify it, tag it. It's sort of like taking inventory in a retail store, like, right? All the things are out of place on the shelves every night when you close. You got to put it all back together every day.
Yeah, right.
Data is a mess. It's a mess globally. It's a mess in every company. And it's garbage in, garbage out, as the old saying goes. And so just getting it to a place where AI doesn't care about the garbage, right? It can figure out the difference. The humans, not so much.
It's funny too, because I think there's really two topics there, right? One is data availability, right? Which is in and of itself a great big project. If a business is in the middle of a giant analytics project, like it's the same issue. That's got to get done. You got to get the data in a spot. So availability is one. Accuracy is a wholly different conversation. Like I talk to customers who, good tech isn't going to fix bad process. Like at the end of the day, like if it's not written down anywhere, if you're somebody who's out there going, well, I'm going to use AI to solve the fact that I don't have my policies written down. Well, that's risky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I had a conversation with a customer who was like, well, our agents generally do the job well. We train over the shoulder. So let's just inform the model with call recordings. I'm like, well, that's why Air Canada's bot made up a customer incentive, like that. Probably not the route to go. I mean, maybe at least to do an initial inform, then scrub clean. But I mean, I think what it is doing is, it all, I don't want to say it's creating a moment of pause, but it's definitely, I think in a lot of ways, if you're trying to do this right, it's creating a moment of like inventory and realism inside businesses to go, are we okay? Great, we can turn it on. Awesome. Is it going to do anything? Maybe not. Do we have a policy around whether whether you're allowed as an employee to use it or not? Great. All right. What are the real use cases? All right. If we have real use cases, do we even have data to inform real use cases? Like, it's creating this almost macro level, not AI specific review of the business in a lot of ways, at least in our experience. I wonder how sometimes if you meet with clients, if you're like, hey, this is a really great opportunity, but there's so much like unraveling to do before we get to technology that maybe it's not a great opportunity. Have you run into those?
We have. I would say there's some other maybe external drivers that might not be as obvious to most folks. So the interesting thing is, particularly with the three public cloud providers that we all know and love here in the U.S. And mostly around the globe, they all have massive incentive programs with their sales teams to drive AI consumption.
Yeah.
Right. It's a arms race at the end of the day. And so because of that, they actually fund a lot of the work companies like RapidScale does for the customer. So if we can partner with the client, write down the use case, provide it to Amazon or Google or Microsoft, and there's reasons why you might go with one or the other, they will literally fund the PS work we do to drive the cloud consumption on the GPUs in the AI machine learning models in their platforms. And so that's why I tend to say to clients is like, don't assume you can't afford to get there. Let us help you with that assessment. And we might still tell you, hey, the juice isn't worth the squeeze on this one, but there's some other areas through talking to some of your peers in the business or other leaders in your business that we think we can help with. But more times than not, we do find, hey, let's start small. Let's don't boil the ocean.
Yeah.
Let's start with one use case. Let's build an RFP database for you and help you respond to RFPs, right, faster. Like, so instead of needing 10 people to do all of that work, and think in telecom, for example, our parent company, right, E-rate season comes around and they respond to hundreds of E-rate RFPs the same time every year. We win some percentage of them every year, but we can now leverage, AI to do most of that work, in an automated and fashion based on our data and facts and things that we've done in the past, and not worry about the machine learning systems hallucinating and providing bad data, because we're only training it on our data.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the key, is start small, prove the use cases out with the executive team, show the value, and then add on from there. And it's like anything in IT. Once people get used to using it, they're like, this is great. Can it do this thing now for me?
Yeah, right. I'm totally with you. And Duane, I'm about to break our cardinal rule about the length of an episode that we talked about in advance of this thing, because I have like 7 more questions I want to get into. We'll save them for the next conversation. Awesome. I would love to. This was super informative and really great to connect with you again, obviously. And we're super excited about everything that RapidScale is doing. I think in particular, your willingness to, I mentioned this earlier, sort of act like consultant, I think, and you and I have a lot of history on the service provider side. And I think through the last 10 years, that business has been so enamored with platform. Like, platform would be the thing we were valued on, that we stayed away. Yep. Or tried to limit our engagement in the surrounding services. But the reality of it is the customer values in the surrounding services. So I think, to me, that's been an interesting development in watching your organization as it's become, part of Cox. The story that you told earlier about, customer outcomes and leaving the world a better place and the whole 9 yards. That, not to get super esoteric about it, but it feels like you guys are like, yeah, we'll go do all that work too, so that the platform has value, not just make it about the platform. Yeah. So it's super interesting to watch.
Yeah, we really operate on believe it or not, a 10-year plan. So if you think anybody that's public, you're quarter to quarter, and you're measured by the most brutal analysts in the world, right?
Yeah.
And we just take the long term view, right? We will outlast and outsurvive many of our competitors that will get acquired by private equity and merged and combined. And that's not to say they're bad companies or bad people. It's just, I think, in this world of uncertainty and massive technology advancements, people are looking for assurances, right? Stability. And I think, we're kind of a rare business that can offer that in this amazingly interesting, technologically advancing world that we live in today.
Well, it's a great way to end this portion of the episode. Let's hit a couple little things of fun. I'm gonna shorten it up. I had 3 or 4 fun questions. We'll make it 2 so we get done on time here. First one, and it's a loaded question, but I'm going to ask you for a short answer. Give me a shameless prediction over the next 18 to 24 months. Could be in tech, could be in sports. Try to stay away from, making it about politics and religion. You know what I mean? But tell me something we can look back on, maybe a year from now or 18 months from now that we can see if you were right.
Look, I think, and maybe this isn't the Nostradamus level prediction, but I think you're going to see a lot of liquidity in the markets here in the next 12 to 18 months, but a lot of still hesitancy, right? I think we had a long time of low interest rates and a lot of M&A activity, a lot of PE firms speculating on startups. And I think we learned a lot during that period of what is a real company at the end of the day. And I think it comes down to 3 things, and we need to get back to fundamentals there. And I think we're gonna. I speak to a lot of bankers, a lot of PE firms, a lot of M&A potentials, and you fundamentally have to have a product that's different. You have to drive EBITDA, and you have to have a compelling story to the customer of what problem you're solving. And if those 3 things don't exist, good luck getting funding or acquiring. And so I think as rates start to come down, there'll be a lot of money coming off the table or going onto the table, and they're going to be looking for well-run businesses with great ideas that help customers. So I think we've just been in this super constrained, high interest, high inflationary environment for the last several years. And so I think it'll be fun. It'll be great to see what things come out of that and what advancements are made. But that's my prediction for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and hopefully we've learned, right? I mean, as the money comes back in, there's been multiple 2000, 2008, I'd say the mid 2010s. There's been a couple of these periods when the economy was moving, interest rates were low, investment was high in tech, where we just sort of were happy to throw money at ideas without fundamentals behind them. You're seeing right now even, announcements over the last couple of days, the big conglomerates going, wow, these businesses over here we bought really don't have anything to do with our core. So I guess we got to spin them out. We'll see. I mean, hopefully I'm hopeful as well. We'll look back, super interesting, what's going on politically and how that might drive the economy. So we'll see. We'll check that. All right. I'll make it 2 more quick ones. What's on your end table right now? What are you reading? Favorite business book? Something we can put in the liner notes for people to hit.
Great one. I am about halfway through a book called Measure What Matters.
Great book.
It's a fantastic book.
Yep.
I would have assumed you've read it once or twice by now, but
yeah, I have.
And I finished Chip Wars right before that. So it's a great segue because it talks about the founders of Intel and Andy Grove and why Intel was so successful in both books, but for very different reasons. So if you're interested in just implementing very simple things to help your company stay focused and drive results, I think it's a fantastic book.
All right, now the fun one. We get to our dystopian future, whatever that happens to be. You can insert that based on the kind of sci-fi that you enjoy, whatever dystopian future that is. But only one application continues to work on your phone. You get to choose which one it is. And be careful, because the kind of future you're envisioning may affect whether the app is useful or not. But what's your one app?
Oh, man. That is a very tough one because I'm not a huge social media guy. So I would say I hope that stops working at some point.
Probably not a bad idea.
What I'll apply this to photos and videos on your phone, right? I think as time has passed, it's become easier and easier to use AI, whether you're an Android guy or an Apple guy, to find photos with specific things in them when you're looking for them. Like, how many times are you at a bar and you're like, man, I did this cool trip and I saw this, and you're like, I can't find the photo, right?
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, please make that better and better and better. And it's really the only thing I care about on my phone at this point.
I love it. So, when you're hidden in some cave with a shelf full of canned goods that will hopefully last you for a couple of years. The one bit of entertainment you have is the ability to
memories, man. That's what we're all
go through
here
your memories.
For. Make great memories
in an AI curated way, which is a good way to end this episode.
There you go.
Duane, a complete pleasure, man. Always. It's so great catching up with you. We've got a shared history that makes these conversations fun to pull back into every couple of years. We will not wait so long for the next time to chat, and we'll do it online again. Thanks for your time. I really, really appreciate it today.
Appreciate you guys having me. Love chatting as always, Scott.
Will do. Thanks so much. Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.